Witness, state your name and occupation for the court.
So it was you who issued this, was it?
Your subpoena? I did what was necessary.
Well, look what the young man has become. I didn't think I'd see the day when you'd take that tone with me, I must say.
The witness will ensure his responses are pertinent to the questions asked.
My name is Seishiro Jigoku, a Supreme Court judge from the Empire of Japan.
16 years ago, this man came to London as a visiting student. 6 years later, he returned to Japan. As well as presiding over the Supreme Court, he is also Japan's Minister of Foreign Affairs. I am, of course, fully aware of Mr. Jigoku and his preeminent roles. I invited him personally to the International Forensic Science Symposium as a representative of his country. I hear he also played a key role in the conclusion of the Anglo-Japanese Treaty of Friendship and Navigation.
It was a great honor to be involved in the negotiations. I put my all into that treaty.
Judge Jigoku, I must ask.
Well, I never fancy the young murdering student turning up here of all places.
You acquitted me yourself. And now I'm a practicing defense lawyer.
Yes, and full of self-importance like your friend across the courtroom, I see.
You came here to London by invitation to the International Forensic Science Symposium, but then, without informing anyone of your plans, you took flight to France.
Took flight? I'd have to object to that turn of phrase.
Then explain yourself. What exactly were the circumstances? It's not our witness. Wait your turn before asking questions.
Well, I was somewhat expecting this, and I'm sorry to say, I decline to comment.
What?
Leaving the country prematurely when I was Leaving the country prematurely when I was an invited guest may be questionable etiquette, but my decision is unrelated to this case. I can't be bound to testify.
Unrelated, you say? Swear to tell the truth, nothing but the truth, and mostly the whole truth, unless I don't feel like it, so help me God.
I appreciate that a respected police officer has been killed, for which I offer my condolences. However, being an alien, I'd obviously never met the man, nor do I know the first thing about him. As such, I'm in no position to testify. It's as simple as that.
So you would run from all this?
I beg your pardon?
This case is more far-reaching than the murder of Inspector Gregson. It has ties to another murder, a case that was tried in Japan almost a year ago now. A year ago in Japan. The murder of Dr. John H. Wilson, you mean? That's right. And you, Judge Jigoku, are at the heart of both cases. The defense has evidence to prove it. Well, Ryunosuke, I see from the look in your eyes that you're resolved, what's the name of the game again? To carry this through to the very end, too. Let's see your evidence, then, you great ace attorney. What proof do you have that's frickin' the one that I just got, idiot?
Take that!
This is a telegram detailing a communication sent between Britain and Japan approximately 1 year ago. The communication contained 4 names: K. Asugi, A. Shin, T. Gregson, and J. Wilson.
Uh-oh. You little... Where did you get that?
In Tokyo. From your office, Judge Jigoku.
What? How on earth did you...
What's this all about? Why is my name on that list? This list of 4 names follows a certain pattern. It's a puzzle. T. Gregson and J. Wilson are the names of victims. K. Asogi and A. Shin are the names of assassins. No. Oh, and then somebody shot... No, that was a flashback. A year ago in Tokyo, Dr. John H. Wilson's life was taken in a Western-style restaurant in the capital. The culprit was found to be a visiting student with a silly hat who went by the name of Giselle Brett. But her real name was Asa Shin, a professional killer sent on a mission to kill from Great Britain. A. Sheen and her victim, J. Wilson. And the murder that just took place here in London was the counterpart to that crime. An assassin sent from Japan, also a visiting student, Kazuma Asogi, whose victim was the British police inspector Tobias Gregson. K. Asogi and T. Gregson. One assassin from each country to kill a target residing in the other. What exactly is the defense suggesting? These 2 cases of murder, one that took place in Britain and one in Japan, were masterminded by a pair of individuals from each country as a form of assassin exchange, and the telegram the defense has acquired is proof of this international contract to kill. What? The telegram was found in your office, Judge Jigoku. In other words, the mastermind in Japan was you. Judge Jigoku, what's this all about? And you, Kazuma, you lied. During yesterday's proceedings, you acknowledged that you'd accepted the assassination mission, but the mark wasn't Judge Jigoku at all. It was T. Gregson, Detective Inspector of Scotland Yard, as shown by the name on the killing contract. Very impressive, Ryunosuke. But actually, I didn't lie. The name of the target I was ordered to kill never passed my lips yesterday. The idea that Seishiro Jigoku was the mark came entirely from you. You deliberately avoided saying a name? The defense claims these 4 names indicate some sort of international assassin exchange. I'm sure I speak for all present when I say that the very idea seems utterly absurd. Well, Mr. Jigoku, what do you have to say for yourself? His silence only goes to prove his guilt. Is that how that works? Let me consult my law book real quick. If someone doesn't talk, it must be guilty. It says right here, fine print. Only lawyers can read fine print. There's another very important point that this new development brings to light. There's now a distinct possibility that the scene of Inspector Gregson's actual murder was in the witness's cabin aboard the SS Grouse. Judge Jigoku, you have to testify now. To refuse would put you in contempt of court.
There's no need for such a vicious stare, young man. Very well, then. As a parting gift to you all, I'll tell you everything I know.
It seems this Japanese gentleman has information that the court must hear about the alleged assassination exchange and the events of the night of 31st October. Present your formal testimony now.
As you wish, my lord. It's true that Kazuma Asuge was assigned the assassination mission 1 year ago now. The target was Inspector T. Gregson. That was a condition of the British study tour. However, in the end, something happened that meant the young man was unable to carry out his mission. On the evening in question, a member of the crew was on duty outside my cabin at all times. If there'd been a shot fired, the crewman would have heard it, so clearly I can't be involved.
So you admit it then, as this communication suggests, there really was an assassination exchange arrangement between Britain and Japan?
A political endeavor at the highest levels, not something I can discuss here.
To use such a worthy practice as foreign study to coerce somebody to commit murder. It's the most appalling thing I've ever heard.
Appalling? Well, it's easy to judge.
Pardon?
Asugi had a reason for taking his sword to that British inspector, you know.
What?
Which is why he accepted the mission in the first place. Isn't that right, Counsel?
Kazuma-sama? Judge Jigoku, if you are the mastermind behind this operation in Japan, then tell the court the identity of your counterpart in Britain.
Lord I'm not obliged to divulge that information.
As I said yesterday, I've killed nobody. I freely admit that I accepted the mission, but on the night the plan was to be executed, I backed out. As blind umpire. Welcome, Blind. In short, this assassination exchange that the defense has identified is unrelated to the events of this case.
The crucial point is this. Your police inspector can't have perished aboard that steamship in Dunkirk. Because if he'd been shot in the cabin, it's inconceivable that a member of the crew wouldn't have heard it.
That's right. Gregson was killed after returning to London, in the room on Fresno Street. And the perpetrator of the crime was the Reaper, Barak von Zeeks. The prosecution's accusation remains unchanged. To think that a seemingly innocent foreign exchange program was a facade for such Machiavellian dealings. It's Barak. It's not a title, it's his name. Barak von Zeeks. Clearly, it's a plot only a government minister and high-ranking judge such as the witness could hope to execute.
Well, I seem to recall that it was someone on the British side who controlled everything. Wink, wink. Nudge, nudge at the judge.
Be that as it may, it is not the place of this court to pursue this villainous assassination exchange plot. We are concerned only with the tangible events pertaining to the murder of Inspector Gregson. Is the defense clear on that point, counsel? Yes, my lord. I'll keep that in mind as I cross-examine the witness. Something happened. Amnesia. I presume you're referring to the incident that occurred during Kazuma's passage to Britain in January. The awful tragedy that took place on the steamship.
Word arrived at the ministry some 2 weeks after the ship's departure from our shores. The visiting student had been killed, but his body had somehow gone missing in Hong Kong. The news was wired to me from a detective I'd placed on the ship to accompany the assassin.
Obviously, Kazuma didn't actually die at all, but he did lose his memory, including all details about his special mission. Did you not consider dispatching another assassin at that point?
That wasn't possible, simply because that black-clad young student over there had already put himself forward as Asugi's replacement, and there was no way to stop him from reaching Britain. Ah, my hands were completely tied.
So Mr. Sholmes' strategy worked perfectly. He predicted everything that would happen. Months later, my memory returned, but I'd never intended to go through with the assassination mission anyway.
So you were playing me right from the outset, were you? Is that it?
I'd sooner be guilty of that crime than of taking someone else's life. I was prepared to do whatever I had to in order to get myself here to Britain. This line of questioning has gone on long enough. All the court should be concerned about in the testimony given by this witness are details relating to his relationship with Inspector Gregson and the victim's murder.
In that case, as I've already made perfectly clear, I had no connection to the man or his death.
And you have some means of substantiating this plea?
Hold it!
Outside your cabin in the first-class area of the SS Grouse, you mean?
Yes, that's right. Not least because there was a murder of a student passenger earlier in the year, I imagine. The liner operators have taken to posting a crewman outside every first-class cabin door.
It seems prohibitively expensive to have that much extra crew, or they just have nothing better to do. I can confirm the presence of the crewman guard myself. What do you mean? Because I accompanied Inspector Gregson to Dunkirk that night, I witnessed it with my own eyes. There was a well-built crewman standing guard directly in front of the door to the witness's cabin.
At that particular time, of course, I'd gone to the ship's dining room for dinner.
The inspector and I asked the crewman to allow us into the cabin while we waited for Judge Jigoku's return. I suppose Inspector Gregson was there in his capacity as the Reaper. He was intending to take the witness's life. Exactly. As I've said numerous times now, I had no intention of killing anyone. So the crewman let two potential assassins into the cabin he was supposed to be guarding? Not the most convincing of sentries, really. In truth, those were my thoughts too. But anyway, I stayed to talk with Inspector Gregson for a short while, and then I left him there, and made my way off the ship alone. Was the guard still at the door when you went? Yes. He glared at me as I walked past.
You see, that proves it.
Hold it!
Soundproof rooms. The crewman who was standing directly outside your cabin door, you mean?
That's right. A muscular man with a permanent grim expression on his face. He didn't move once from that spot. To be honest, I thought he was a miserable fellow. But as it happens, he's a vital witness now.
Okay, well, objection, hearsay. You need to have him come here and say that. There's no doubt that Gregson was killed by a gunshot, and it's inconceivable that a crewman standing just outside the cabin door wouldn't have heard that. But wait, what about the ship's enormous steam engines? The noise of them could have drowned out the sound of the gun being fired.
Sadly, young judicial assistant, that won't wash.
Oh.
You'll recall that my cabin was in the first-class area of the ship, which is also, of course, the quietest. Don't imagine for a moment that it's anything like steerage, where the judicial assistants go.
I didn't mean... But a hole like that made by a bullet was found in your cabin, Judge Jigoku. That's compelling evidence that a gun was fired in there. What's that? A bullet hole?
Oh yes, you're talking about what the detective uncovered in the wall yesterday, I presume. That was obviously a rotten panel eaten out by Woodworm. No doubt he didn't find an actual bullet.
That's the hole in this argument.
Sadly, I was unable to arrange for the crewman to be brought back to Britain with me. But obviously, if a gun had been fired in my cabin on the night in question, as the defense implies, I would have been arrested on the spot. I would never have made it to Britain in the first place.
Very true. The witness's logic is sound, since no gunshot was heard from the witness's cabin on the night in question. We must assume that the witness is telling the truth.
I'm glad you've seen sense, my lord.
I know Kazuma's already admitted to taking on this incredible assassination plot, but even so, hearing it confirmed by somebody else is still a real shock. It's unforgivable, using Kazuma-sama's feelings to manipulate him into agreeing to such a despicable plan. But I think Kazuma manipulated Judge Jigoku, too. He completely double-crossed him. Oh dear. It's hard not to see that as a stroke of brilliance on Kazuma-sama's part. One way or another, though, Gregson ended up dead. I really think that the murder must have happened aboard that steamship. So you mean Judge Jigoku must be lying? I know I shouldn't let my emotions cloud my judgment. But you must destroy him, Mr. Naruhodo. Oh. How very emotional of you. So, I don't think either of the two things. So something happened here. It's this. Remember the crew designer is doing his cabins. Designer is doing his bandana. Do I... We have very little evidence that's linked to the ship itself. Let's inspect this. Karuma, the great blade, it's such a thing of beauty. I want to gaze on it for hours. The tip of the great sword, broken. It's such a shame. It's been so meticulously cared for over the years. You can almost hear Karuma's sobs. Kazuma must have really taken a swing for that to happen. Oh, ha ha ha, there was a drill. Why did we even get this? I don't remember. There's little things all over the place, don't you? There's part on the top of a pocket watch that you twist to set the time, isn't it? It's called the crown, I believe. A watch would be quite useless without one. The crown, like what sits on top of a monarch's head. That's a very grand name for such a tiny part. But actually, yes, Mr. Naruhodo, if this is a crown, I have a feeling I might have seen a monarch around here with a very bare head. If by monarch you mean pocket watch, then I'm quite sure you have. Do I have to inspect the pocket watch now? I'll do it in a moment. I'll do it right now. What do you think, Mr. Sato? I feel sure I know exactly what will fit here. Really? I was just thinking precisely the same thing. We're about to see that little round component is actually part of Inspector Gregson's broken pocket watch. Really? I was just thinking precisely that too. Perfection. A perfect fit. I knew it. Yahari. Yapari. Alright, perhaps you know it. I'll make a note of this new information at once. Book-a-bomb. Well, that'll be useful later. For right now, outside your cabin at all times, false. Falsehood.
Objection!
Falsehood and flimflammery. Yes, as the court has heard, there was a crewman posted outside Judge Jigoku's cabin. However, we can be sure that, contrary to the witness's claim, the guard wasn't there at all times. What? I have here a notice of a particular event that was scheduled to take place aboard the steamship on the 31st. Where did you get that? It's evidence gathered by Mr. Harlock Sholmes. You were acquainted yesterday, if you remember.
Harlock Sholmes again.
According to this itinerary... so sleepy. After leaving the port of Dunkirk at exactly 10 p.m. and for a period of 20 minutes, all crewmen of the SS Grouse were to gather on deck for an evacuation drill. All crewmen were away from their posts? And during that 20-minute interval, of course, any gunshots emanating from your cabin would have been heard by no one. In summary, Judge Jigoku, you had ample opportunity to commit the crime.
Arg!
Objection!
A 20-minute window of opportunity. That's an excellent find, Ryunosuke. But it amounts to nothing. Why? Because the witness clearly stated in his testimony that no incident occurred in his cabin. Oh! He said it didn't happen, so he's not guilty. Unless you have some decisive evidence that can show his testimony to be false. Your accusation is nothing more than conjecture. Very true. Well, counsel. Inspector Gregson was killed in Judge Jigoku's cabin that night. I'm certain of it. Because the defense has the evidence to prove it. You will present the evidence for the defense at once, counsel. Conjecture again. I guess we're gonna do this, right? We're gonna go, hey, his watch... we'll just do
Take
it.
that!
Judge Jigoku, this was found in your cabin yesterday. What is that? The crown of a pocket watch.
A pocket watch?
And if you will observe, the victim's pocket watch, which we know he treasured, is missing precisely that part. It can't be. Moreover, this crown is a perfect fit on the spindle protruding from the victim's watch. Now, the fact that this was retrieved from Judge Jigoku's cabin tells us that the victim's watch almost certainly broke there. In other words, the victim was killed on the 31st during the 20-minute evacuation drill, in the cabin occupied by you, Judge Jigoku.
You're razor sharp, aren't you, you young murderer?
Objection!
Expertly maneuvered, Ryunosuke. And your argument sounds entirely plausible. At first. But rather like this pocket watch, it's full of cracks. What? And I believe Judge Jigoku feels the same way.
I was wrong to acquit you earlier in the year.
Sorry?
If I'd known that it would result in anyone having to listen to this drivel, I would have declared you guilty just to spare the world your ridiculous bombast.
I think it is clear that the witness will have to give further testimony.
When you hear what actually happened in my cabin that night, you will notice the pitfall into which you have stumbled. Prior to your renewed testimony, I would like to clarify one point. The fact that this part of the victim's watch was discovered in your cabin means that you acknowledge he was there, I presume.
Yes, I do.
Very well, then. You may proceed to give your formal testimony about what exactly happened in your cabin aboard the ship on the evening of 31st October.
Of course. As a man of the law, I have no intention of obstructing justice. I had a guest waiting for me when I returned to my cabin after finishing my evening meal in the dining room. When I walked through the door, a mustachioed Englishman was there, foolishly waving a gun at me. I soon took care of him with an ippon seoi throw, though. He couldn't wait to run away after that. I imagine his watch was broken when I threw him over my shoulder. It has nothing to do with his murder. The inspector was clearly killed having returned to Britain because his body was found in London.
Ippon seoi?
A common jujutsu martial arts technique in my country. I was careful not to use too much force, but the man obviously landed too heavily for his watch to take.
So, Ryunosuke Naruhodo, I imagine you can see the flaw in your logic now, can't you?
What?
The fact that the pocket watch was broken in the witness's cabin in no way proves that the victim's murder took place there.
Arg! I've no doubt the inspector intended to kill me, but he didn't manage to pull the trigger.
Yes, because he was merely the tactician, not the Reaper's hand of death.
Well, the testimony appears to make perfect sense as far as I can tell.
Finger pointing is dangerous.
Let me express my deep gratitude for your understanding, my lord.
But if this testimony holds, Judge Jigoku will be deemed to have had no involvement in the case.
Well, counsel, I really see no reason for wasting precious court time here on a cross-examination.
Sorry, my lord, the defense has a right to cross-examine, and I don't intend to squander that.
You're an embarrassment to your countrymen, not knowing when you're beaten.
Nothing more embarrassing than a man who calls himself a great ace attorney after winning 34 consecutive court cases without a single loss. Disgraceful. Disgrace to your country and your family.
In that case, proceed, Mr. Naruhodo.
That don't matter. Just waving a gun. Threw him. Ran away. Start with this one.
Hold it!
Even though the man had a gun, that was a very brave move, wasn't it?
My ippon seoi is far faster than a bullet, I can assure you.
Objection. That's not true. But surely all that commotion caused the crewman to come in, didn't it?
Yes, of course. He burst in immediately, without knocking. The inspector hurled himself at the stocky fellow and just managed to slip past him to make his escape.
The outstanding guard does it again.
Luckily, there aren't many situations I can't get out of using a quick ippon seoi throw. Nageru!
Nageru!
Hold it!
The crown snapped off and the glass covering the face of the watch was cracked.
Preferable to the man's head being pulled off or his spine cracking, wouldn't you say?
Not that the man was spared for long. A bullet to the chest soon saw to that. But the point is, the broken pocket watch doesn't prove that a murder took place.
Absolutely not. All the watch proves is the power of my jujutsu throw.
Whatever you say, it doesn't quite ring true that no shot was fired in that cabin. Because there was an obvious bullet hole in the wall.
What are you talking about?
Hmm?
That's what the star of your lowbrow detective stories told you, is it? Well, I don't care for such fiction. Haven't you worked it out yet, you little stripling? No murder took place in my cabin.
No, let's press on this. But there's no evidence that proves the victim ever returned to London alive.
Just take a moment to think that idea of yours through now, stripling.
What?
If the inspector was killed on the steamship in France, how on earth could he have got back to Britain?
In a suitcase.
When people die, their bodies remain at that same spot. It's a devil of a thing.
Well, then obviously the culprit must have moved the body.
How exactly? Carrying a corpse off a ship in your arms would raise quite a few eyebrows, at least, don't you think? And the movie Weekend at Bernie's won't be invented for another 80 years.
Well, yes, that's true, but... All passenger luggage is inspected when it is unloaded from arriving vessels. And I would like to think the border police would query the corpse of an English gentleman as hand luggage. If the murder had taken place aboard the ship, you would imagine the body would have been disposed of at sea. There would be no sense in risking being caught by attempting to transport the body back to Britain. Let's kill that idea then. But perhaps not. Mr. Sato? We've heard that the first-class passengers were under constant scrutiny by the crewmen posted to guard them, which would mean that the culprit had no opportunity to dispose of the body in the sea. Yes, that's true. So transporting the body to Britain may have been the only viable alternative.
Dear me, you really are new to this, aren't you? I thought I'd been perfectly clear, but it seems I'm going to have to explain it in words you can understand. I think I ought to alter my testimony, with your consent, of course, my lord.
I have no objection. State your amended testimony now. There is no possible way I could have transported the victim's corpse back to Britain. Objection, although I don't know what the objection is. You could have used his sword to chop it up into tiny pieces and then eat him. That's a bit small to put a body in. Is it going to be the picture? Really now? Do I have to... Well, I'll press on this first. There's an idea.
Think about it, stripling. All passengers and crew disembarked at the same time and pressed through the same checks at the border. The symposium guests were then driven straight to the hotel in carriages organized by the ministry.
And we met you as soon as you arrived at the hotel.
So you did. Well then, remind me, did I have a corpse over my shoulder at the time?
No.
So we're in agreement then. I couldn't possibly have brought the inspector's body back to Britain. Unless, of course, they've developed some clever device these days to instantly move things from A to B.
Funny you should say that. Professor Harebrain's invention didn't actually work, if you remember, Mr. Naruhodo.
Yes, of course.
The defense has become unusually quiet, I notice.
Yes, because there's really nothing more to say.
So that's his story. Well, that's my story. Well, I suppose if you think about it, whenever you drop a teacup in the office and it breaks, we don't say, Mr. Naruhodo must have been murdered there, do we? Is that a veiled threat about what might happen to me if I break another one? And the fact is that Inspector Gregson's body was found in the little room on Fresno Street. If he really was killed in Judge Jigoku's cabin, the body would have to have been moved somehow, obviously. Transporting a dead body over a country border, that would be impossible for the majority of people, so there must have been some special circumstances that made it possible for the culprit then. That could be a vital realization, I think, Mr. Naruhodo.
Alright, well, I guess I'm just going to present the picture. Take that.
Objection!
Yeah.
There's no possible way you could have moved Inspector Gregson's body, you say. I would say the opposite is true.
And what's that supposed to mean?
Far from being impossible for you to do so. The transporting of Inspector Gregson's body back to Britain is something only you could do. What are you talking about, Ryunosuke? As well as being a judge, Mr. Jigoku is also Japan's Minister of Foreign Affairs, which means he's exempt from having his luggage searched when he enters the country. It's a law that I just made up. That's how you do lawyering. We learnt that... Oh, he might have told us. Fine. We learnt that when we first met you upon your arrival in London.
Well, all those passport checks and luggage searches at the border took... Oh, no, that's... Well, all those passport checks and luggage searches at the border took rather a long time. I must say I'm very envious of your ministerial status. You didn't have to go through any of that, did you? I knew you were jealous.
Jealous like a corpse? I presume you recall this, Judge Jigoku? It's a photograph we took in the foyer of the hotel to mark the occasion. As the court will note, you have with you your large travel trunk. Large enough, in fact, to have a corpse inside. Mr. Naruhodo, surely you're not suggesting... I'm afraid I am, yes. 3 days ago, when we were chatting innocently with the new arrivals from Japan in the hotel, the body of Inspector Gregson was just meters away from us, inside Judge Jigoku's trunk. And he didn't pay the corpse tax. That's where they get you. The UK IRS. Oi oi, you got a license for that corpse?
Order in the court. I'm skeptical, counsel, that a grown man's body could fit inside even the largest travel trunk.
It could. Because I happen to know that the witness himself, a man of considerable size, fits inside his trunk. And verifying that would be extremely simple, wouldn't it, Judge Jigoku? Is he gonna pull an OJ? Is he gonna be like,
oh, I can't quite get into this trunk. Oh, I'm twisting my body every which way, and it's just not going in. If I do not fit in the trunk, you must acquit my bunk.
But inside his trunk, how horrifying! And after we'd spoken with you at the Great Waterloo Hotel, you had the opportunity to visit the apparent scene on Fresno Street, taking your trunk with you in a cab to deposit the inspector's body.
I don't have to listen to this nonsense.
Dr. Gori, the coroner who examined the body, has confirmed the possibility. She's acknowledged there are signs that steps may have been taken to disguise the true time of death. The onset of the body's decomposition, could have been stored. No, it couldn't have. The onset of the body's decomposition could have been delayed by storing it in a refrigerator.
Counsel,
As I remember explaining yesterday, refrigerators of the requisite size are few and far between. Yes, I'm sure they are, but one place they're certainly found is on large ocean liners. Such ships are equipped with electrically refrigerated cold rooms to keep food fresh on their long sea voyages, and the SS Grouse is no exception. Professor Mikotoba told me about it only yesterday. Well, Judge Jigoku? However much you prolong this debate, you can't eliminate the truth. All the evidence points to you being the killer.
Well, this is all very heartening. I can see that it was a wise move, letting Asugi and you embark on this study tour.
What are you talking about now?
Logical reasoning, of course. All court proceedings will be built on logical reasoning in the new century. I can see that you've both laid firm foundations for that already.
Judge Jigoku, please stop diverting attention from the issue at hand. The defense has made an accusation against you. How do you respond?
Respond? There's really no need for me to respond, is there?
Why ever not?
Because before you can even begin to answer the question of when the victim was killed, you must first establish one key fact. Where was the victim killed? It's quite logical.
The actual scene of the crime. The prosecution's stance is unaltered. The killing took place on Fresno Street when the gunshot was heard. As the accused, Barak von Zeke shot the victim at point-blank range. Since no tangible evidence exists to disprove the prosecution's claim at this time, the defense's deductions amount to little more than an elaborate fairy tale.
I'm afraid that's how the logical reasoning...
Oh.
I'm afraid that's how the logical reasoning the British are known for really works, young stripling.
The victim was shot in that little room on Fresno Street and died instantly. I'm afraid it's the prosecution's claim that's the only fairy tale here. Ooh, got him. How can you say that? Quite simply, because that claim directly contradicts a certain piece of evidence in our possession. Very tantalizing, counsel. I think you had better explain yourself to the court, don't you? The prosecution claims that Inspector Gregson died instantly when he was shot at the scene on Fresno Street. But this evidence clearly contradicts that claim. I mean, this suggests... Or this has... Okay, this has blood on it. But I don't think that changes anything. It might be the only thing that I have, though. What would contradict the idea that he was shot and died instantly on the ship? The fact that they're suddenly bringing up it died instantly is curious. Is it this? Do we think that the bloody hand... Whoops, not that. Do we think that the bloody handprint is Gregson's? It's kind of out of nowhere to suddenly bring this up, but okay.
Take that!
The Japanese really are a curious breed. To proffer an argument with such conviction only to present such nonsensical evidence. Perhaps my Japanese friend's inexplicable thinking is why people talk of the mystique of the East. In case you hadn't noticed, I'm not the only Japanese around here. You even have a mirror? The court is not interested in the mystique of anything. You will be penalized accordingly. Was the victim killed in the room on Fresno Street, or was he moved there after his death? Surprisingly clearly. Present the correct one this time. Shut the hell up, you. These people. This was inside the cave. Well, I don't. It's strange that we haven't brought up the slash in the trunk so far yet, right? It's got blood on it. It had his passport in it, and the sword struck it while it was open because the metal wound up being lodged on the inside. But it's not like we had... no. I might just try the trunk. There's the thing about the watch. Like, we've already used the watch to say, like, he must have died the day before. Still feel like the watch should have worked.
Take that!
So it's not the message board, and it's not the case, and it's not the pocket watch. Is it the gun? What contradicts the idea that he was killed on Fresno Street? as opposed to on the ship. Well, it says he must have died on the ship. Is it going to be like, even though it wasn't the case, is it going to be the sword? Like, if Chip was missing from the...
Take that!
That was not it. It says no, he couldn't have been killed at... I feel like we're totally done with that. Telegram doesn't matter anymore. Yeah, whoa, we've quickly run out of run out of potential evidence. Is there gonna be something in this photo that proves something? Someday? If I...
Take that!
Boom. So whatever this is, it's gonna be very strange. It's gonna be like nonsense, whatever it is.